Hello, good morning and welcome to News Desk. We're live on DSTV channel 421, Go TV channel 125. Across all our social media handles, we're Joy News on TV. You can listen to us live around the world on myjoyonline.com. My name is Faustina Safo. Coming up in the next 60 minutes, U.S. court document exposes Ghana's legal lapses in $134 million Trafigura Judgement Debt, saying it failed twice to challenge the UK ruling. Stay because we have details. Also in this bulletin, we unpack the governing New Patriotic Party's educational policies going into the December polls. And later, Sports Ministry insists it pays the state broadcaster GBC over $3 million for its broadcast of the 13th All-African Games. These plus business news on the radar this morning. Please be my guest. Thanks for staying with us. Now, a U.S. District Court document is this morning revealing that Ghana's legal team failed twice to challenge a $134 million judgment debt awarded to energy firm Trafigura by English courts. This debt stems from a power purchase agreement between Trafigura's GPGC and government. The case dates back to January 26, 2021, when a UK tribunal issued a final award, finding that Ghana had breached its contractual obligation by terminating the power purchase agreement with GPGC on February 18th. And let's get more on this. We're joined on Zoom now by Dr. Kwabena Donkor. He is a former power minister, and he actually oversaw this contract. Dr. Kwabena Donkor, thank you for your time here on Newsdesk. Now, initially, you raised objection to government's decision to terminate this contract with Trafigura. What's your initial reaction to this new revelation?
Devastated.
Why?
I am extremely devastated. I'm devastated because we have been ill-served by parochial interest. And in a way, I believe we have not handled these judgment debts well. We have not highlighted them enough. These are avoidable debts. When government decided to abrogate the contract, I warned that, you see, every contract has a process of abrogation. You make room in the contract for termination. But if you do not follow the termination procedure, then of course you run into problems. That is one. But more importantly, the reasons for the termination of this particular contract. One of the major reasons the then minister cited in his letter of termination was that Ghana Power Company, Ghana, which is a subsidiary of Trafigura, had not obtained the necessary licenses from Energy Commission, etc., to start running or attempting to bring their plant into operation. Meanwhile, in the power purchase agreement, one of the obligations of the government of Ghana was to assist the company to secure all government permits. So this is clearly stated in black and white. And so if you use this as a basis for termination, you are just laying the groundwork for losing at any arbitration. That was one of the issues. The other issue was that this particular emergency power purchase agreement had the lowest tariff of all the thermal plants contracts we signed, including those which were in existence before us. It had the lowest tariff. This was the only agreement that did not require a guarantee from government of Ghana, whether in a full call option or whether in a letter of standby credit or whatever. It didn't require any of these guarantees. And therefore, you would not ordinarily terminate the cheapest of the contract that gives you the cheapest tariff. That will not be what you will terminate. And particularly so when your grounds for termination is such flimsy. I wonder what advice they obtained from the Attorney General. I have reason to believe that this decision was taken on the basis of parochial interest, who was representing Trafigura in Ghana at the time. And that is why I make the categorical statement that we've been ill-served by parochial interest.
But then government's key concern was that apart from breaching some of the protocols and in terms of the documents they needed to operate from the Energy Ministry, which they didn't have at the time, they also argued that some of the equipment involved was used. You oversaw this contract. Do you admit that due diligence was not followed through?
I don't. We sent an engineering team to go and inspect the equipment. And by the way, for your information, the Trafigura plant, which was an emergency plant, was not the only slightly used plant we brought to Ghana. The AXA plant was also a slightly used plant. This government and that contract, the AXA contract, was signed for 5 years. At the end of the 5 years, this government has further extended the contract by 10 years. And so you cannot say that the Trafigura equipment was slightly used and that was the basis, because that is not the first one. In any case, the Energy Commission and the technical team all inspected the plant and gave the plant a clean bill of health. And it had the shortest contract of all the contracts we signed. It was only for 4 years. That was the shortest emergency contract we signed. It was to hold us for that period of emergency, so that it normally takes minimum 3 years to bring a thermal plant into operation, minimum 3 years after financial close. And therefore, this was to be a holding measure until the country finds other thermal plants that can be long-term. And therefore, it is most unfortunate. If it were the only used equipment, that may have swayed issues, but that was not. The AXA plant, which is still in existence, whose 5-year contract lapsed during their term and which they have renewed. So that cannot be a reason.
Now, I'm just going through the U.S. courts and the concern they have raised. They say that this document is revealing that Ghana's legal team failed twice to challenge this $134 million judgment awarded to the energy firm. You are a member of the minority in Parliament. Would this come up when next the minority sits?
Well, I wouldn't know. I'm not in the leadership of the minority. But it's worth raising. What was the Attorney General's Department and the Ministry for Energy? What were they doing? Did they sleep on the job? Or they realized that, look, the arbitration settlement was on such strong legal terms that it was not worth challenging. That could also be an option. But I also know for a fact that even after the arbitration settlement, the government of Ghana agreed to engage Trafigura with a settlement plan. And one of the options Ghana government explored at the time was even to pay for the plant and take over the plant. Again, we went to sleep. And this is not the first of such issues we've had, where we go to arbitration, there is a judgment against us, we agree a settlement, and then we renege on it.
Dr. Kwabena Donkor there joining us with his thoughts. Finally, before we let you go, what would be your recommendation moving forward?
My recommendation moving forward is that whichever government comes to power in January 2025, and I believe the NDC will come to power by the courtesy of the good people of Ghana, we must probe all such judgment debts and find find and establish culpability, and public officials who let this country down should be asked to pay for it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kwabena Donkor, there joining us with his thoughts on the U.S. District Court document revealing that Ghana's legal team failed to challenge twice a $134 million judgment debt awarded to energy firm Trafigura by English courts. We'll expand the conversation in subsequent bulletin. But now let's do politics. The governing New Patriotic Party on Sunday launched its manifesto for the 2024 elections. Here at Joe News, we have been interrogating some key promises the party has made as we seek clarity on their implementation plan. One key sector is the education sector. And seeing that the NPP says it will work to make its flagship FreeSHS policy better, we want to interrogate how they plan to do that. Also, the NPP is promising to revamp schools in underserved communities while scaling up the establishment of technology hubs in schools. Well, thankfully, joining me in the studio to shed more light on these policies is Dr. Kwabena Donkor. He is the Deputy Director General of the Ghana Education Service. He joins me in the studio. Thank you so much for your time here on NewsDesk. Glad to have you back.
It's a pleasure to see you again, and have a small surprise for you.
Oh, okay.
It's both our birthdays today.
Really?
Yes.
Oh,
yes,
well,
yes.
Happy birthday then.
Happy birthday to you too.
Happy birthday.
It's also the birthday of my youngest daughter.
Wow.
She also turned 13 today. So today is a very special day, and I'm happy to be spending with another birthday buddy.
You know, so let's get right into it. I'm just going through the document as we speak, and some of the key things that the NPP is promising should they be elected to steer the affairs of the country. One, you're promising that you would ensure the FreeSHS policy continues well-financed. Now, we're concerned about the decision of government to push the FreeSHS policy agenda. However, there are concerns about the implementation of the policy, financing of the policy. What key things would you do moving forward to ensure that this policy is not just delivering free education, but quality education?
Well, thank you very much. I think the last time I was here, we had a bit of discussion around what the FreeSHS has been able to do, and I think it is no argument now that the FreeSHS is a good policy and that it must benefit all Ghanaians. One of the key things that His Excellency Dr. Alhaji Mahmoud Bawumia is promising to do based on the work that we have done in the manifesto is to ensure that in terms of the financing of the FreeSHS, the money is freed up in other areas to ensure that the policy would receive, or the implementation will receive the resources that it needs in order to do well. Number one, we have all heard His Excellency look at a different financing approach for how infrastructure are built. So for example, if you take Get Fund, supporting or funding all educational infrastructure in the country as we speak, let's say Get Fund in any particular year has 2 billion cedis for educational infrastructure. Get Fund goes through a procurement process, gets contractors to begin building. Usually, contractors may take anywhere from 18 to 24 months to build that infrastructure. And Get Fund will use the next 2 years' monies to build, say, 500 new buildings for schools. What Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia is promising to do in terms of ensuring that money is made available is that you bring in private investors. Private investors build that infrastructure, and they build it so that government leases. The same $2 billion, for example, budgeted each year to build new infrastructure, you use a portion of that to lease that infrastructure. So let's say private businesses come to build 1,000 new structures. Leasing those 1,000 new structures, I'm just saying annually, may cost, say, 800 million cedis or 1 billion cedis. Already, annually, you have saved 1 billion cedis that would have been tied up in infrastructure building. And then what you have done is that you have given government room to be able to then use that resources more judiciously towards the financing of FreeSHS. And then what you have also done is that you have created more jobs. You've built the economy because now you've invited more private people to get into education infrastructures. So on that alone, Dr. Mahmoud Baumier's proposals, strategy for ensuring that you bring in private sector to look at education infrastructure then frees up the money for government to be able to even invest more in areas that are needed.
I'm just going through the manifesto right now. I'm seeing that you have committed to revamping schools in underserved communities and renovating kindergartens and primary schools to make them more conducive and inclusive. I want to find out what specific criteria you would use to identify some of these schools for renovation. And do we have the money to fund it?
Again, the same discussion we were just having. Now, there are standards, both national standards, regional standards, as well as global standards for what schools should look like. Obviously, a primary school or a school classroom in Ghana may not have the same requirements in terms of a school classroom in the UK. Why am I saying that? They're in a different climate. And so they may have different requirements in terms of heating and cooling and the likes. We, using our local technologies, must still ensure that our classrooms meet a certain standard. There has been a lot of talk in this country since President Rawlings' time and even before then in terms of school infrastructure that continuously need to be upgraded. A lot of people have referenced in the past what they term schools under trees, which are not necessarily all schools operating under trees, but schools that the infrastructure may be substandard. This government over the past 7 years has done a lot of work in improving that infrastructure. There has been a lot of work in primary school infrastructure, a lot of work in new KG model schools. What the manifesto is promising to do is to constantly upgrading on that, ensuring that you have the right set of environments that are convivial, that are conducive for learning. And we have already put out a lot of KG model schools. We've built a little over 100. I think it's maybe 120 or so new KG model schools. These KG model schools are 3-unit classrooms, so KG1, KG2, and then a breakout room. So there are 3 classrooms, office space for staff, and then it is built in such a way that it creates a compound house environment. So there is a wall, an entrance to the place, and then the building also forms part of the protection of the space. What that model school is allowing us to do is to be able to ensure that we keep the children in a confined but spatial environment without the danger of children straying off. And so these model schools are what we intend to expand across the country to replace some of the older buildings and older infrastructure that are out there. Now, if you go to Kwabenya, we actually launched another model school that actually then integrates technology, looks at the approach in terms of ensuring that the environment is conducive for play-based learning. And if you read through the manifesto, you'd realize that we want to deepen play-based learning in our approach to how children learn, because children learn best through play. And it is a curriculum, a tried and tested approach that has been used all over the world. And we've been using it in Ghana at certain stages, and we know that it is solid. So that kind of infrastructure also supports the play-based approach to learning. So those are the infrastructure we intend to.
I can see also in your manifesto, you mentioned fully implementing the school safeguarding policy to create a conducive learning environment. Is that same as what we are doing right now?
It is part of it, but school safeguarding includes everything from ensuring that young girls can come to school and feel safe without being harassed. So we want to implement a stronger sexual harassment policy to protect our daughters as well as our sons. Sometimes we think that it's only the girls that are harassed, but we want to protect our children in our schools, so school safeguarding. We want to ensure that teachers also feel safe in school. And so we want to implement a policy that ensures that we have a stronger guidance and counseling to support students who may have mental health challenges and things within our schools. We want to ensure that we implement a policy that supports persons with disabilities in our schools more fully. And you would see in the manifesto that we pay a lot of attention to persons with disabilities all the way from early years through tertiary, to ensure that our schools are conducive, our integrated schools are actually conducive, and that we have more universally designed environment that fit everybody regardless of their disability, whether physical, visual, hearing impairments, or other forms of developmental disabilities. So all of that encompassing is what you call the school safeguards, focusing on the student, but also focusing on safeguarding our teachers within those environments.
I can also see here, I'll take you back to the FreeSHS policy, because I see here that you plan to improve infrastructure and phase out the double track system. What's the time span for this policy implementation? Because phasing out the double track system is something that would require a lot of infrastructure. Do we even have the money to put up the structures?
Well, actually, what is interesting, double track was introduced in 2018. And at the time, the government promised 5 to 7 years. The 7 years will be up, I think, in 2025.
Okay.
And the strategy is in place to ensure that it is phased out at that time. As you will notice, over the past 3 years, we have actually moved from double track in the schools to what we call the transitional calendar. And then hopefully by the beginning of the 2025-2026 academic year, we would have enough infrastructure to contain all of our students. To begin with, after the introduction of double track, the government also did some assessments and realized that we needed to complete 1,132 new infrastructure across our schools to make sure we can accommodate students. Boarding facilities, classroom facilities, assembly halls, administration, dining halls, and the likes. As at the end of 2020 into 2021, we had completed some 703 out of the 1,134. We are on track to ensure that the rest, which are continuously being completed, will be completed by the 2025, which gives the government that 5 to 7 year promise to phase it out. And at that point, we have enough infrastructure to accommodate all students moving from junior high school into senior high school in one track. And at that point, there will be no need to run a double track or currently our transitional calendar. What that means is that we would be at that point back to what we have all been used to. A term begins or a semester begins with everybody and ends with everybody. And we are still within that track. So the government is promising, or the manifesto is promising, that based on the trajectory we are going on, we are confident that it can be eliminated at that.
Do we have the funds to make it come true?
Well, it's a matter of the investments we have made since 2018. And the investments we have made since 2018 all the way to now are enough investments based on the next 12 to 18 months. Yes, based on projections, we do have the resources to make sure that it will be completed. And again, the proposal to even now bring private investors to support educational infrastructure would even free us in terms of the locked up funds that go into building.
Another concern that has been raised by parents and even students in senior high school is the quality of food served. I can see here, as part of your manifesto, you mentioned promoting school farms to ensure sustainable food supply. How do you think this initiative will be implemented? Well,
so if you take our senior high schools, and here I would even use Sogakope Senior High School. I'm looking at a different school, but Sogakope Senior High School has land of 319 acres. Out of that 319 acres, their infrastructure only covers about 18 or 20 acres. So Sogakope Senior High School has, even at the best estimates, or the most conservative estimates, have about 250 acres of fallow land. If you go to Jenejene Senior High School, they have close to 300 acres of fallow land. If you go to Atrensua Senior High School, they have huge lands. And so whether you are here in Accra, Chimota Senior High School still has some lands. And so what we are proposing to do is that the senior high schools alone already have so much fallow land. So you work with other agencies, Ministry of Agriculture, a World Food Program, which is a development partner, as well as other agencies or even private developers, to look at building school farms. School farms not only in terms of even agriculture or farming per se, but also animal husbandry, aquaculture, poultry farming, and the likes. And once you do this, especially in partnership with Ministry of Agriculture, with the, some of our development partners, then all of a sudden, you begin to create zones within the country on our senior high school campuses that can ensure that we have food security and food sustainability to support the free senior high school, to the point that we may even have surplus for market. So you would not only have food security for senior high school as well as the school feeding program, but you begin to even have surplus that you can send to market. Now, we are doing this to also ensure that even on those schools where farms, whether animal husbandry, aquaculture, poultry farming is done on those campuses, we would also ensure that we tie into the learning so that students are able to go onto those farms to see how things are managed, farms are managed, the animal husbandry is managed, poultry is managed, fish farming is managed on those campuses. And then students get additional skills. But we know that we have enough lands to make sure that we can use those to our own benefit to support school feeding at both basic and high school level.
It's one thing to have the food items. It's another thing for the quality of the meal to be improved. So it then begs the question, what would be done to ensure that the caterers are providing the children with good meals?
Well, even now, what we do is that we have what you call zonal menus. So, for example, if you go to the middle part of the country during the rainy season, my own home region of Ahafo and the likes, you'd have a lot of plantains. So during that time, there are a lot more what students like to call red, or what we all like to call red, or you and I in Accra, we call gobe. So we will feed students with the staples that are available at that particular time. If you go into the Dambai and into the northern regions of Ghana, you may at a particular time feed students with more of the yams and the tubers and the likes. But we always ensure that in even farming on a school, you get all of the nutrition from your greens, from your vegetables, your cabbages and your tomatoes and your carrots and the likes that you can then add into the diet. Now, we also need to understand that we have our matrons as well as our kitchen staff are trained. They are professional trained staff who look at balanced diets, nutrition, and everything else. And then they go through professional training at their own educational level, as well as within the service, to look at nutrition and quality of food. And so we believe that if we are able to then supplement what they will get from market with what are coming from our zonal school farms, it definitely will improve quality of food at all levels.
Currently, I know that when it comes to the amount allocated for each child under the school feeding program, it's 1 cedi 30 pesos. Would you review that?
I think right now, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's about 1 cedi 50 pesos.
Okay.
School feeding is, while it is part of education, school feeding is under the Ministry of Gender, Women and Children and Social Protection. We do know that there is efforts even in this administration to look at what can be done to ensure that the cost is reviewed. But beyond the money that goes to the vendor is the quality of the food. So our proposal, if moving forward, we are able to implement the school farms project and we are able to supply the vendor or the cook with the raw products, and even still keep it at 1 cedi 50 pesos. All of a sudden, they don't have to spend as much going to market, and for that matter, their profit margins improve, the other nutritional things they must do improve. So it is a combination of things, but I do know that there is efforts, even in this administration, to look at how you increase it. Initially, as you know, it used to be around 1 cedi. It was reviewed up to, I think, 130, and if I'm not mistaken,
well, we've been doing our checks, and I'm told we're still at 130.
130, okay.
But I'm sure that another policy you're proposing is deploying solar power systems in secondary schools to reduce utility cost.
Yes.
How do you plan to implement this? Share with me the specifics of this plan.
Well, as a matter of fact, we have started a pilot program with the Ministry of Energy.
Okay.
Where we are installing solar panels in some of our senior high schools, in some of their buildings, some of the classroom buildings, as well as some of the dormitory buildings, we are installing solar panels. What that does is that the solar panel then augments from the national grid. And so we already know that we live in a part of the world where we have, at the very least, about 300 days of clear sunshine every year, which is a renewable natural resource that we believe in our schools, where we have so much infrastructure, we have so much concentration of students in those schools, we can use the roofs of the school buildings to then harness the energy of the sun and then feed it into the school grid. Now, most of the energy that schools use are usually in the evening, which are the off-peak hours. And so if during the day we can use the solar panels, even with reserve batteries, then it would definitely ensure that there is cost elements that are reduced in the paying of utility bills. But what that also does is that it frees up a lot of energy from the national grid to then support industry, like your station that would need the power. And so if we can take 1,000 second cycle institutions and install solar power on them and remove them from the national grid during peak time when institutions like yours need the energy, then we can ensure that there is also energy sufficiency and energy efficiency that are happening, and the power is being directed to industries that may need it.
As we wrap up the conversation, I'm seeing here that you're suggesting integrating teacher licensure exams into teacher training programs and realigning university academic calendars. Explain this. How will this work?
Thank you. So we all know that from the beginning of the teacher licensure programs, teachers have never disputed that they support the licensure because it helps them in terms of their own professional standard. A teacher who has a license here in Ghana is able to move to any other country that have an articulation agreement with Ghana. So teachers have never opposed the licensure. During the course of the implementation, what we have heard and what we have seen as the challenges that are coming up is the time between which a teacher completes College of Education and sometimes when the license exam is offered, which is offered about twice a year. So let's say a teacher completes College of Education around June or July, and then it's offered in December. That's about a 6 to 7 month period the teacher must wait to write the licensure. National Teaching Council, in working with them and coming through the manifesto committee that I served on, we do know that they can integrate the assessment for a license at the end of the teacher's educational career, so that the teacher does not have to finish, wait 6 or 7 months and write.
So it means we're phasing out the teacher licensure.
We are not phasing it out.
Okay, we're
National Teaching Council is basically, if I can say it in layman's term, they are going to implement their exam at the colleges at the end of a teacher's term, rather than writing it separately.
Okay.
So right when you are finishing college and taking your certificate, as part of your final exam, National Teaching Council, for lack of a better word, accredits the colleges to then run that licensure assessment as part of your final exam, so that when you take your certificate, National Teaching Council, which has accredited your college to make sure that they are teaching you to that standard, will then also issue you a license. So we've joined the two, thereby addressing the challenge that teachers had, especially around the gap that sometimes is between completion and when they do the assessment.
Thank you so much, Dr. K Batando. He is the Deputy Director General of the Ghana Education Service. He's also a member of the NPP Manifesto team. He joins us in studio today just to shed light on how they plan to implement some of the key policy proposals the party is putting forward. Well, we are your election headquarters, and trust us, we will be unpacking this document, and so in subsequent bulletins, we'll look at other sectors as well. Thank you, Doc, for your time.
Thank you.
He's my birthday mate, so happy birthday.
Happy birthday to you too, and hope you enjoy. You have a bright color on.
Yes.
You know, it's birthday day.
Yes.
Sunflower.
Well, away from that, the Sports Ministry is insisting it paid state broadcaster GBC over $3 million in its broadcast of the 13th All-African Games. Its Director General, or the Director General of GBC, Professor Enim Al-Hassan, earlier indicated that they had only received $105,000 from the broadcast of these games. Now, responding to a query from member of the Public Accounts Committee, Sam Nate George, about the payment status for coverage, the Sports Minister indicated that full payment had been made. Here are excerpts of that. Well, where we are right now. It says we refer to the Public Accounts Committee sitting on Monday, 19th of August, 2024, where the Minister for Youth and Sports, Honorable Mustafa Yusuf, led the National Sports Authority and the National Youth Authority, two agencies under the ministry, to respond to issues raised by the Auditor General. At the sitting, The Member of Parliament for Ningo Pram Pram constituency, Sam Nate George, asked a public interest question regarding the payment to Ghana Broadcasting Corporation for their production and broadcasting services rendered at the 13th African Games, to which the minister responded that GBC was paid in excess of $3 million. Now, the ministry attention has been drawn to the comments made by the Director General of GBC stating that they did not receive the said amount. We wish to make the following statements to clarify the issues. Now, the Sports Ministry is trying to give us some clarity as to what is happening. One, the ministry says that the Ministry of Youth and Sports, through the local organizing committee, received proposals from various stakeholders for the production and broadcasting rights for the 13th African Games. Now, they go on to say some organizations submitted proposals in excess of $6 million, which the ministry deemed excessive. Also, the ministry, in its quest to build local capacity and leave a legacy after the 13th African Games, engaged GBC, I beg your pardon, to become the official broadcaster for the Games. The other reasons for the ministry's decision was that GBC's financial quotation for production and transmission was the lowest. So they're giving us a background as to what happened. They go on to say, with the understanding that GBC will use the services of third parties to assist them implement the obligation, the total agreement was $3.6 million. Subsequently, an agreement was reached between the two institutions, the ministry and GBC. Now, from the total amount, $2.5 million was paid directly to GBC in two tranches. First, $1 million and the other $1.5 million on the 13th of March 2024 and 22nd of May 2024, respectively. Now, this raises questions as to why the GBC did not admit to receiving this money. But we'll interrogate that in subsequent bulletin. But for now, let's just go through the statement from the Ministry of Youth and Sports. Another amount of $1 million was paid to third parties upon the instruction of GBC in accordance with the contract. As a public institution, we are committed to transparency and accountability in the discharge of our mandate. Well, let's broaden the conversation here on Newsdesk and bring in the executive assistant of the sports minister. Thank you so much for your time, Abdullahi. He joins us via Zoom with more. Abdullahi, thank you for your time here on Newsdesk. We've just been going through the statement that the Ministry of Youth and Sports put out, disputing claims that GBC initially put out. So let's get clarity. You say you have paid them $2.5 million, but then initially the agreement was $3.6 million. So have they received the other tranche? You would have to unmute for me so that I can hear you clearly.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, Faustina. And let me say good morning to you and your colleagues, or your supporting colleagues, and to your cherished audience. As you read in the press release by the Ministry of Youth and Sports, in our quest to leave a long-lasting legacy after the successful host of the 13th African Games, we engaged GTV, where the contract stipulated that a total amount of $3.6 million will be paid for the services or the scope of the contract to be executed by the Ghana Broadcasting Corporation. So the minister 2 days ago was at Public Accounts Committee where a public interest question was asked by Honorable Sam George with regards to local staff complaining that they have not received payment for the services they rendered. So the minister indicated that in excess of $3 million have been paid with regards to the contract being signed, a contract that was signed by the Ministry of Youth and Sports and the Ghana Broadcasting Corporation. In the release, we've given dates of when the payments were made and how it was made.
Okay.
I'm yet to see, and in a letter written by the Ghana Broadcasting Corporation to the Public Accounts Committee, which I'm pretty sure that you have at your disposal.
Yeah.
There was an indication that of the total payment made for the games. Now let's refer back to the total payments for the games, which is 3.6 million.
Okay.
GBC was only entitled to 105,000 US dollars. Not from our statement, but the letter written by GBC to the Public Accounts Committee, which the minister was copied in that letter. Paragraph 4 says that of the total payment made for the games, GBC was entitled to 105,000 US dollars. Therefore, the statement that GBC was paid in excess of $3 million.
Well, we've been going through that document as well, Abdullahi, and we have these facts. However, my concern is with the disparity with figures. GBC says they are entitled $105,000. You say that you have paid them $2.5 million. You paid in 2 tranches. I want you to clarify for me. Have you paid them the $3.6 million or the $2.5 million according to your statement?
Okay, we need to understand here that GBC indicated in their letter that they engaged third parties in the execution of the contracts.
But payment for third parties, is it done directly by the Sports Ministry or by GBC?
The contract stipulates the process and how those third parties will be paid. I must place it on record that the ministry did not engage third parties directly.
Okay.
It was the responsibility of GBC. And we had no role. We do not even know who the third parties how they look like and who they are. What we know is that GBC engaged a third party because they indicated to us that the capacity of the contracts we've given them is beyond their capabilities. So they would have to bring in third parties to come assist them execute the contracts. Ours is for
this
the
money you
contract
paid,
successfully
according to
executed.
your statement, the $2.5 million you paid directly to GBC.
Directly to GBC.
So you did not pay them $3.6 million as agreed. I want you to clarify. Did you pay them $3.6 million agreed upon as we speak right now?
We paid in accordance to what the contract stipulates.
But in your statement,
$2.5 million was paid to GBC when they requested for us to pay directly to them. When they requested that $1 million should be paid to a third party directly, in an official letter, it was executed in accordance to the contract or what was stipulated in the contract. GBC has not denied the fact that they have not received payment from us with regards to the contract they signed with us. What they are saying is that the contract we signed with them and the quantum or the sum of the contracts, they engaged third parties, and the third parties were entitled to portions of the money, which they have equally executed and made payments for that.
Only GBC can give us clarity as to what they actually mean. I'm more interested in the Ministry of Sports.
Nonetheless, what they were entitled to, or they are parts of the entire contract that they executed, is the $105,000. This clearly indicates that the ministry has executed or has fulfilled its part of the bargain. We do not have issues with regards to GB. We have not seen any contrary fact that says that GBC claims we have not fulfilled our part of the bargain. And on this note, I believe that the Director General, in his interview, where he created the impression that the minister misinformed the public, should apologize. Because the evidence that is out there, I've seen people have intercepted documents, letters that were written by the Ghana Broadcasting Corporation, signed by the professor himself, to the Ministry of Youth and Sports, demanding for payments, which the ministry obliged. So with the evidence available and the evidence in the public domain, I believe we should be asking the Director General questions. Did he indeed receive it or not? He should come and tell us he's not received it. Then, whatever evidence that must be brought to expose the person who is misleading the public will be placed out there. What we have been informed is that, or what even triggered some George's question, is that local staffs who were engaged during the games by the Ghana Broadcasting Corporation indicated that the GBC has not fulfilled the...
Oh, unfortunately, we've lost Abdullahi Jamaluddin. He is with the Ministry of Youth and Sports. He's been giving clarity as to their stance. They're insisting that they've indeed paid the state broadcaster, GBC, over $3 million for its broadcast of the 13 All-African Games. My name is Faustina Safo. Up next is Business, and Winston joins us in the studio.
It's now time for Business on Newsdesk. My name is Winston Taki, and now to our first business story. The International Monetary Fund has disclosed that the government may introduce the suspended 15% value-added tax on electricity if inflation rate continues to decline. Government suspended the plan to implement the VAT on electricity after public outcry on hardship the tax may bring on consumers, particularly residential consumers. There is more in this following report. The IMF in its July 2024 country staff report hinted that government may implement the policy if inflation goes down. The IMF said on page 10 of the report, and I quote, "On the revenue side, implementation of VAT on residential electricity expected yield of 0.17% of GDP was suspended due to strong social resistance. The authorities are committed to implementing this measure when the inflation dynamics are more conducive." End of quote. The VAT on residential electricity was initially announced as part of revenue-generating measures under the IMF-supported COVID-19 recovery effort. A letter from the Ministry of Finance signed by former Minister Ken Ofori-Atta and dated January 1st, 2024, directed the Electricity Company of Ghana, ECG, and Northern Electricity Distribution Company, NETCO, to implement the VAT for residential customers above a specific consumption level. Now, Home and Safety Solutions, a leading provider of housing solutions, is preparing for this year's EcoBank Journeys Habitat Fair with significant discount on their offerings. Marketing manager of the firm, Obriye Boamenu, discusses with my colleague Carlos Caloni what attendees can anticipate at this year's fair.
Hello, welcome to Safety and Home Solutions. We are your complete door solutions for all your home needs. My name is Obri Abuamenu. I'm the marketing manager for Safety and Home Solutions. At Safety and Home Solutions, we are your complete door solution. We have external doors. We also have internal doors. Our external doors are from Turkey, and they are Turkish premium doors. We have our own manufacturers. We have single, 1.5, and double, as well as we have 7 feet, 8 feet, and also we can customize it per your requirements. If you have any dimension or any request, you bring it to us. We do it for you. Within 3 to 4 months, you get it back. So our external doors, we have different finishing. We have the glass finish, we have the embossed wood, we have the wooden finish, and also we have the aluminum finish.
All for business on Newsdesk. We have more news for you after this break. Stay tuned.
For news, please log on to my johnwanda.com. My name is Faustina Safo. I'll be back at 2 p.m. with Election Brief.